But I can tell you one thing: we should fully expect. I don't know about the politics of these things being broadcast, but we're not going to get fewer of these cases happening because there's powerful drivers for these cases to occur, both monetary and political. You see these,
especially if there's any convictions. There's any convictions that every little wannabe little binger in the country is going to say, "Wow, even that
doesn't
case
matter.
worked out for him."
You don't even need a conviction for guys like Binger. These trials are win-win. They can't lose. I'll share an anecdote from the Zimmerman trial. The attorney there, Angela Corey, was a prosecutor out of Jacksonville. She was running for re-election. She was going to lose because it had a large part of the demographic was African-American. She had prosecuted some African-American cases that were controversial. The Marissa Alexander case, who purportedly fired a round into the air in an abusive relationship, and then a 14-year-old who had murdered someone, and she prosecuted him for murder. Frankly, I think both of those were appropriate prosecutions, but the community didn't like them. There were marches against her. She was going to lose her office. And then the George Zimmerman case happened, and she got herself a completely different judicial district put in charge of that prosecution. And suddenly, instead of marches against her in her district, there were marches she was at the front of in her district. And she won re-election. And when she lost the case, he was acquitted on all charges unanimously. That wasn't a loss for her. I mean, sure, she lost the trial, but was that her real goal, or was her real goal political capital to get reelected? Because if you look at it that way, she won. And it'll be the same for Binger. If he wants to run for DA again or some political office, or it's a win-win. Either he gets the conviction, and look, I was right, the guy's guilty of murder, or he doesn't get the conviction, but he fought the good fight regardless. There's no loss here for him. And in terms of the money, there's a lot of money in these cases. Right? Not so much the Rittenhouse case, although there's $10 million lawsuits flying around this too. But any of these cases that involve a cop, I mean, these cities, politicians who run these cities are more than happy to spend other people's money to make their political problems go away. And that's why you see in the Chauvin case, 20 million here, Jacob Blake, 27 million, whatever these numbers are. This is just, and by the way, the lawyers, what's his name? The Benjamin Crumps of the world. It's like an ATM for him. I mean, 3-4 times a year, he's getting a third of those settlements. It's unbelievable. And he doesn't even go to trial. I mean, he never goes to trial. They're all settlements. So as long as there's that much money to be made and that much political capital to be made, we're going to see more of these cases, not fewer.
And then you throw in the GoFundMes now, where somebody, if they can create a big enough scandal within 24 hours of an incident, the family's raising money. I mean, Michael Brown's family ended up fighting over who could get the profits from selling various Michael Brown paraphernalia in Ferguson. So their incentive is to narrate the story to go viral on social media, because all of a sudden you can raise $250,000, $500,000. Your life is set for somebody that may not have a lot of means to begin with.
And that's why I'm like listening to Andrew. You're making amazing points about, there's a gain in this politically for everybody. But I like to still think reasonably optimistically, and that even if someone is politically leaning to Binger's side of the aisle, they would look at that performance of, on the one hand, overt dishonesty and judge him for it. And they would look at that moment where he, with his finger on the trigger, we didn't know at the time, pointing the gun at the jury, would say, holy cows, this man has poor judgment. But the way politics are, they'll look at him and say, yeah, he fought the good fight. He did what he thought was right. And I agreed with him. And I still think Kyle is a killer. And so let's get him in for, I don't know, what would he run for? Judge or?
They're going to blame the judge. And what's coming next
or DA first.
I don't think any African-American ended up on the jury. So the media narrative you're going to hear, you already saw him testing it out last week. It's going to be the judge and an all-white jury. They're going to say
there was
the same
one person
thing in
of
the
color.
McMichael case if McMichaels get acquitted.
The person of color is a Hispanic male.
Yes.
Oh, does that count or not?
That only counts sometimes.
Kyle Rittenhouse is also a Hispanic or
This is
half
true.
Hispanic male. So who knows?
George Zimmerman went from being Hispanic to white
to respond
overnight.
to respond to what you were saying. I think that people's opinions of this case differ drastically, and I'm sure everyone here will agree, differs drastically depending on whether they actually saw the testimony themselves or if they got the highlights from the legacy media or the mainstream media. I mean, just a polling of people that I know and people that, asking my friends who have you talked to about this case and what are their thoughts. And even people that were left leaning that actually saw the testimony themselves, they were like, man, self-defense. I think he's innocent.
It's a dangerous tendency of we lawyers to think that the world looks at these things like we do, that they look at evidence and apply powers of reason and come to rational conclusions. That's not how normal people operate. Normal people, first of all, they're busy with their lives, so they're hardly paying any attention at all. What little attention they are paying is being consumed by the mainstream media, who's serving them massive doses of propaganda, whatever they want the spin to be. And people don't magically know the truth. People only know what they're exposed to. And propaganda works. That's why people do it. So I periodically teach at the FBI Academy at Quantico, and I talk about these high-profile cases that have been propagandized. And I'll ask an audience, 300 senior law enforcement special agents, I'll say, hey, you're all familiar with the George Zimmerman case. How many people here believe that he got out of his car after the dispatcher told him not to get out of the car? And every hand in the room goes up because they saw that a million times in the paper. And then I'll play the 911 call with the dispatcher, and I'll say, all right, I'm going to play it. Now I want you to raise your hand when you hear the dispatcher tell him, don't get out of your car. And it never happens. I mean, that's a complete myth. It literally never happened. Some of you probably think that's what actually happened, but it never happened. People believe it because they saw it 1,000 times. And you can see on the faces of these senior law enforcement officials, they still can't absorb that it didn't happen. Their faces go blank because not only did they hear it 1,000 times, they've said it 1,000 times. They're emotionally committed to this version of the truth that's untruth. And it's very difficult for people. You can't simply present people with proof that what they think is untrue and they just go, oh yeah, okay, I guess you're right. That's how lawyers may think because we're argumentative and that's the nature of how we work. But that's not how normal people think. You show them counter evidence to something they believe in, and it's like it's invisible. It's like
they go even deeper. That's been in psychological studies too. When you present people with contrary evidence, it just winds up digging them even deeper into the hole. So it's a real problem.
With the Zimmerman case, I have now fully relinquished or abandoned any opinion I had because I realize now, discovering in this trial and others, what I probably did not get exposed to in the Zimmerman, I can no longer have any initial opinion of it. But watching this one in real time and seeing people out there who still do not know or did not know that Grosskreutz had a gun. And then you say, I say, how can anyone not know that basic fact of this? But then you realize how, and I put out a video yesterday where the video got demonetized because it had an image of Grosskreutz with the gun in his hand, not the graphic image of his arm blown off, just the image of him with the tip of the gun pointing to the ground, and another image of Binger with his finger on the trigger. And video gets demonetized, so I re-edit and take out those images. Still have the other unedited version on.
Whereas, by contrast, the media images of Kyle with a gun have been broadcast over and over and over and over.
And now that I think about it, we've talked about it. I know I've used the image of Kyle with the gun. Never had a problem on YouTube.
It's in all my thumbnails.
Well, did you not have problems with YouTube for using an image with the gun in your thumbnail?
Nope, not when Kyle's holding it.
Well, I can tell you that my own YouTube videos is this, what you're looking at right now. It's me talking in my office. I very rarely include any images or any video clips of anything. And every YouTube video I put up is demonetized from upload. And then I hit the little review button, and 24, 36, 48 hours later, I get an email saying, oh yeah, we've reviewed it. It's fine. But of course, then it's not timely anymore. So no one's going to look at it.
Yep.
Of course.
And that's every single video. And all I do is sit at my desk just like this, talk legal analysis, and I get demonetized.
Yeah, you and me both, brother. But forget the fact about the guy not having the gun. I mean, I've seen tweets this week where people are saying, I'm just learning for the first time that Kyle Rittenhouse didn't shoot a black person.
Yes.
Yep. Insanity. Insanity.
It's funny you should mention that, Kurt. Now the cynical pill is going off in my head. They've suddenly discovered Jump Kick Man, who happens to be a black male. And so now I'm wondering, do they throw that in at this point?
The prosecution knew him all along. He said he would testify as long as he got immunity for his other crimes. The prosecution didn't want him to testify, so they wouldn't give him immunity. I mean, they've completely controlled who could testify.
But they can't represent to the court that they don't know who he is, which they did.
Oh yeah, they lied, of course. Shock.
I still have hope that I know we're pushing the lines a lot, but I still have hope that he's just not out and out lying to the court and misrepresenting something like that. Maybe I'm a naive person. Maybe this is a sweet summer child.
It's who he is.
Moment.
When someone tells you who they are, Kurt, listen. I mean, he's told us he's a liar from the beginning.
Damn it! I want to have faith in my profession. We're good people.
Oh, you can have faith in the profession, just not faith in Binger. Binger has proven himself. There's no question.
Prosecutors are barely people. They become people when they're former prosecutors. No, but
Emily
going
Baker
back,
has entered the chat.
yeah, going back to what Andrew was saying about the Zimmerman case, and you were talking about the lead prosecutor on that. But if you go, there's a guy who did the documentary just like last year or the year before on the Zimmerman case. And I was reading the synopsis of it. And when you follow the career path of every state attorney involved in that case, you're like, oh my, like all of them got just monumental promotions, either politically or just straight up the chain bureaucratically. And it's without exception.
Now. One of those prosecutors, John Guy, is now and I hear he's a good judge in family court. Local lawyers tell me he's a good judge there. He was the guy screaming on closing in the trial that not only did George Zimmerman, not only did he have a gun, he had a round in the chamber in the ready to fire condition. Like you would carry a gun any other way if you're carrying a gun for personal protection. Really. By the way, if he didn't have a round chambered, he'd be dead. If he'd had to rack, because he only had the one hand free, if he had to rack that slide, he would be dead. He would have his head broken open on that sidewalk. But people always ask me, one of the most common questions I get from normal human beings is, Andrew, if I do this, that, or the other thing, could that be used against me in court? And I have to explain to people, everything can be used against you in court. If by used against you in court, we mean, is a prosecutor going to talk about it in front of the jury to try to make you look bad in their eyes? There's almost no limit to what they can use against you. They'll use anything. The question is, how much is it likely to hurt you, and how effectively is your defense counsel going to be able to blunt that damage? But whether they'll use it, listen, if you're a trial, they're there to convict you. They're not there to lose. They're there to win.
And to Andrew's point, the reason why I believe you have to go after prosecutors personally for their political aspirations and everything else, and make them put them on trial in a case, and lead investigators too, is precisely what he just described. In Zimmerman, they got exposed at trial, and they also got rewarded. Yet, unless you create personal risk, professional risk for them, you're not creating any disincentive for them not to march forward. Because Binger could lose completely in this case, and the left is going to love him. He'll probably get a CNN contract tomorrow if he wants it, and he'll be on path. And that's why I'm creating my Disbar Binger campaign. Now, it's also because the head of Office of Lawyer Regulation I've had run-ins with before, who runs Wisconsin's ethics for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And my argument to him for 2 decades now has been he goes after little people and he lets prosecutors walk. And I want to use this case as a test case to force him, Keith Saline, been there a long time, time to step up or prove that I'm right and that, OLR is a joke. Hopefully use it. But that's why I think it has to be done. It's not just a matter, it is tactically necessary to deter and discourage the misuse and abuse of prosecutorial power, to put the personal and professional reputation of the prosecutor and investigators themselves at risk.
So hard to do. And if it can't be done, what happens in 5 years when we have the next Kyle Rittenhouse case, and the judge in that case is not Schroeder, it's Binger?
Yeah, exactly. And
why would you do that? Why would you say that? That is rude. I'll be right back.
And what you just said, Andrew, is that's the norm. That's what we face more like in federal court, and a lot of that you don't get judges like Schroeder. You get judges that are there to railroad your client.
Yeah, Schroeder's. Listen, the guy's ancient. He's 100 years old, and his demeanor and his decisions reflect that. But
he's a Southern judge who happens to be in Wisconsin.
Yeah,
and isn't it sad that when we're talking about someone who's considered a based judge or a right-leaning judge, it just means that they actually issue fair decisions as opposed to being completely slanted when you're looking at a leftist judge?
They think about it, they apply reasoning.
Well,
and explain it.
Judges come from the population of lawyers. Lawyers come from law school. Have you been to a law school lately?
No.
It's nothing but social injustice. The floors are drowning in social injustice pamphlets. They're completely politicized institutions. I speak at them and I show up, and it doesn't look like anything resembling a law school to me. It looks like some kind of political indoctrination factory. But all those people are going to graduate, be lawyers, and then in 10, 15 years, they're going to be the judges. And it's going to be a different legal landscape.
I went to school 2002 in Quebec City. It's a 99% French city. And one of the first classes I had with this teacher who was controversial, Régent Breton, for anybody who is watching from Quebec, the first class he gives, it was labor law. And he goes into a diatribe about how America is racist and all this stuff. And then he asks the class, he says, do you know who the most powerful person after the president is in America right now? And at the time, it was George Bush Jr., who was the president. Nobody raises their hands. And I say, I think it was Colin Powell or Condoleezza Rice, because both of those answers came up. And this teacher was, informing a class who had these preconceived notions of the injustice in the United States by highlighting, premises that would undermine their most core beliefs. It was social justice back 20 years ago. It just didn't have the name. And now it's got the name, and it's been concentrated through evaporation over the last 20 years, and all that's left. I mean, I wouldn't want to go to university now.
As has been pointed out many times, critical race theory did start itself in the law school. So yay for us for starting that whole train.
Well, first semester, first year law school for me, back in the old days, but it was already it was already beginning. We were being taught in legal writing to disguise our subjective preferences as objective legal analysis. And it was a basic case. It was about, is there a right for an adult disabled child to make a loss of consortium claim in Wisconsin? You research the law, it turned out there isn't. Why, probably some bad policy reasons why there wasn't, but that was the reality. And I kept getting bad grades. And I was like, what's going on? And then it became clear there was a template written. And the template was, pretend your subjective biases, you want this person to win the claim, is the objective law. And I was like, that's not the assignment. The assignment is to teach us to distinguish between the two. And they were teaching, no, don't distinguish between the two. Lie to yourself and lie to others that your subjective personal preferences are really objective law. And now we're seeing the consequences of it, and it's going to get worse rather than better.
Yeah, that just makes you a bad lawyer.
Absolutely, it does.
If you can't, I mean, even if you're thinking that we're all gonna, have that thought from time to time that our subjective thoughts are better than others, right? But I mean, at least you should be able to tell the difference between the two,
or at least attempt to try.
Yeah.
Well, is it going to make you a bad lawyer if the forum for arguing law shares those same biases?
Well,
or does that make you a good lawyer in that forum? If the forum's not demanding reasonableness and objectivity, then showing up as a reasonable, objective lawyer is a good way to lose cases.
Yeah. And Andrew, to that point, look at the human rights tribunals or the administrative tribunals of Canada. The judges who are appointed. They're not lawyers become judges then appointed. They are special appointees. Some of them, I'm not even sure that some of them have to have been lawyers in the first place. You have these hyper politicized administrative tribunals that operate on their own, by their own system, where the judges are, what's the word I'm looking for? Not radicalized, but getting there with very specific purposes for existence, and their rulings encourage the reason for their existence in the first place. And then you end up with decisions like fining a comedian $43,000 for making a joke about a celebrity kid who happens to be handicapped. You end up with another decision where tens of thousands of dollars for misgendering an employee who had worked at a place for 1 month. That's what you get. And you can see it in Canada if you want a foreshadowment of what it would look like in the US.
I see it coming. I just hope the train is moving slow enough that it'll be my kid's problem.
Pilling. Jesus Lord.
Say that again, Kurt.
I say they accuse me of blackpilling. Lord have.
Yeah, I was going to say I think I'm much more white pilled than most of you, because I see. I'll tell you what. This stream here is evidence to me that the silent majority we're constantly hearing about does exist. Because here it is, we have a channel which is an independent guy. He's a small town, know nothing, nobody lawyer from Minnesota. No, I'm saying he's a small channel guy.
He's the leader of our cause at this point.
And right now,
he's
the king of YouTube lawyers, and he's the most popular channel to watch the most significant trial of the last generation. So I think that speaks volumes about where America's mindset is compared to what our overmasters would have us believe it is.
So pour out an odd bag of Balmore and Lafroig. Spirits flow as the ones who get unemployed. So pour out a glass for the team. Post on Twitter as we hear lost blaming tonight. From the white shores of Nairn to the hills of Glenlivet, there's no one who explains the thought better than Nick. So pour out a glass for the ones who have passed,